Yo, what is up guys? Snap here. Today we're going to be talking about our brand new technology that we are bringing into the 323 Affliction League. And that is going to be the new carry that we are going to be playing for our 6-man party comp, which is going to be a Raise Spectre Necromancer that uses Redemption Sentries. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Snap, why are you playing Spectres? They're dog shit. And you'd be right. However, there's a very good reason to do so. It all starts with this item right here, which is Speaker's Wreath. Now, if you're familiar with culling setups in a 6-man party, traditionally, people are using Southbound. Southbound makes it so you can't kill stuff that's not frozen. Therefore, you can have a very high DPS character, bring everything down to 1 HP, and then you have a very high magic find character, cull all of the mobs for a massive quantity bonus. This works very well. However, there is one downside. One of the best MF items in the game, that being Windripper, is incompatible with this playstyle because Windripper requires the mobs to be frozen and then shattered for you to benefit from it. There is, however, one other way to deal damage to mobs without killing them entirely, and that is Speaker's Wreath. Speaker's Wreath has a line that reads, minions hits can only kill ignited enemies. You can have minions that then do cold damage and free stuff, and then you can benefit fully from Windripper, which you can't do with Southbound. Compared to the alternative, which is Centauri's Answer, you're gaining a net 7 quant and 30 rarity to the party, which is pretty massive for min-maxing purposes, especially in a 6-man where every single quantity matters and every single piece of rarity matters. And so that's the main motivation, is use minions with Speaker's Wreath and then therefore benefit with Windripper for more quant. Pretty simple, right? However, there's just one problem here. Minions just fucking suck. Permanent minions have really big struggles in the DPS department, and temporary minions often require a lot of setup, have bad travel time like SRS, or require a very clunky playstyle, which if you're going for like a long session, MFing is something you want to try to avoid. There is one saving grace here, however, in that the meta content you're doing these days is going to be delirium mirror mapping with tormented spirits. Therefore, the content is very easy. Therefore, you don't need any fucking damage. So you can just play permanent specters and zombies and it works out. Immediately, there are a few stipulations with how you build this character. In order to make Speaker's Wreath work, you need to not have any source of fire damage, because if you have any fire damage, the minion will then crit and then ignite, and it will break the Speaker's Wreath interaction. You also can't use stuff like Ellie Focus because that removes your ability to freeze, which is the whole reason of going this character in the first place, is to benefit from Windripper. So no fire damage. You can't have any auras that give fire damage. You can't have any specters that deal any amount of fire damage. So your pool is already a little bit limited. This immediately eliminates some stuff as well, like SRS that has innate conversion to fire. Because if you were to use SRS, all of your damage would be fire, which then you'd be igniting, and so therefore it's just worthless. The thing we landed on was the crowd pleaser Redemption Sentries or Hyrri's Archers, which are called Hyrri's Watch, I believe. They're pretty similar. With full DPS links, you can reach around 430 million combined DPS in a 6-man party, which is honestly kind of low for the amount of people you have with like a curse bot and an aura bot and everything, but hey man, minions just kind of suck. But honestly, this is more than enough DPS to do even 5 orbs, honestly, and then obviously this is enough to crush Deli Mirror ghosting maps, which is the meta mapping at the moment. There is a lot to talk about on this build, so we'll jump right into it. First of all, let's look at the gearing. We wanted to go crit scaling, the reason being getting crit gives you innate chance to freeze because critting freezes mobs. Therefore, Amada's teaching route where you get as much base crit chance as possible is a very smart idea here. And since we're going Mata's teachings, we're probably going to be leaning a lot more into minion crit chance and minion crit multi than a lot of other builds might. So you're going to see stuff like Severed in Sleep, which is traditionally a meme weapon, but turns out this is best in slot for our build. The other crit scaling we're going to be getting is from Grand Spectrums. We have 3 of the minion crit multi Grand Spectrums here. It's going to shove our minion crit multi up to 556 or a 5.56 multiplier here, and our minion crit chance is sitting at 89%. Our crit chance for minions is quite respectable. It's really hard to get it this high. We of course have a Speaker's Wreath, and we're going to be running a +2 corruptions for our zombies that are going to be in a 4-link. The best in slot chest is probably going to be a +1 Spectre chest. This mod comes from Delve specifically, so it's really hard to do a lot with it. The best you can kind of hope for is going to be annulling it down to just the Spectre mod and then multi-modding it. You can multi-mod it for some ES, and then also you can use the Eldritch currency to try and get 2 implicits. The effective offerings here is really good because we're going to be using Spirit Offering to give a bunch of crit chance and crit multi, and then we're trying to also make our minions reflect immune, and this is a really good spot to get minions do reduce reflect damage here on the implicit. Triad's Grip is going to be the best in slot gloves. We want to leverage hatred scaling on the Aurabot, and so we want to convert everything from fizz to cold. When everything's cold damage, we can just do a ton of hatred scaling on the Aurabot to try and pump the numbers here on our redemption sentry so it doesn't suck so much. We're going to reserve our boot slot for some resistances, some movement speed, and also just some energy shield. So it's just a rare to help res cap, get some movement speed, get some ES. You can use a lot of DPS amulets here, but I think Replica Dragon's Fang is a super easy thing to just slap on. Gem levels is super good with Spectres. It gives you a ton of damage. Even after the nerf, you don't really use the reservation efficiency or even the attribute requirements. It's just really here for the levels. I still think this is going to be a very, very strong pick for this build. Your jewelry, you can get a little bit of minion damage here if you'd like, but honestly, you're probably just going to be res capping and getting ES here. Hopefully you can get a Moonstone Crusader base and then just pump the ES as much as you can and then get some res as well to help res cap. This build really struggles to get defenses if you're going CI. It kind of tops out at like 3.5, 4K, which is okay on its own. So these rings going Crusader base and really getting like super good ring is going to be super important. One of the last super good interactions on this build is going to be Umbilicus Immortalis. You've probably never seen anybody use this belt, but it is currently 45% of all of the damage on the build, and it is mega OP on this build. There is one interaction that works with this belt. It makes your flasks apply to your raised zombies and specters. Now, your flasks, you can put the 70% enkindling orb effect on it. So you have very juiced flasks going to your minions. And the really cool thing about this is that you can actually still gain charges while giving your minions the flask effect. And the reason you can gain charges is because the flasks aren't technically affecting you, they're affecting your minions. So you still gain charges and you can have 100% uptime on these, which means you can Giga Juice a Diamond Flask, a Dying Sun to get 3 projectiles, and at Zeri's Promise to get a ton of gain as extra, a Silver Flask for a juiced Onslaught, and then a Bottled Faith. And the really crazy thing about the Bottled Faith is it spawns a Bottled Faith circle on every single one of your 9 zombies and 5 specters. So you have like 14 overlapping circles that are just everywhere, and you have like really insane coverage on the consecrated ground. There's a couple other flash choices you can consider here. You can mess around with like Taste of Hate is pretty good, but for the current setup that I POB'd, these 5 flasks are going to be by far the most value you can get for DPS. Some other notes about the passive tree here. You're going to be pathing to basically just cluster jewels. Cluster jewels is one of the best ways for you to scale minion damage, and the reason for that is you can get really OP larges. This large in particular is just a 12 passive minion with 25 effect, so it's not the super crazy expensive eye level 84 ones with 35 effect, although you obviously can use those. For breaking into high level deli content, we're going to be planning on using 25 effect with just 3% attack and cast speed, and it's just a lot of damage to path all around. You also get 2 jewels, which you can jam the Grand Spectrums into. You can also put a Fortress Covenant in here for a lot of percent ink damage. The other cluster jewel is the exact same. You put another Grand Spectrum, and then you also have a minion fizz plus attack and cast speed jewel. If you played minions before, this is all going to look pretty cookie cutter stuff. The last thing is you're going to use a large instead of a 12 passive minion here with 2 notables, which is Feasting Fiends to give your minions some leech, and then you're going to want to use Renewal to get some double damage. It's a pretty good DPS passive. Mainly you're just taking this large for the leech. The leech is big here. As you can see on the left, we're leeching 22,000 life per second, and our specters have a total life pool of 48k. They are pretty beefy. They have a fuck ton of recovery, and they really never die. So a few things to talk about regarding gem links on this particular build. You do have a lot of choices on what you can do with your main Raise Spectre 6 link. There's a more DPS oriented focus and a more coverage oriented focus. There are 4 links that are almost never going to change here. That's going to be Raise Spectre, Awakened Minion Damage, and Feeding Frenzy. The Feeding Frenzy is necessary because you need a source of aggression. Usually without aggression, the AI of minions is kind of dog, and so you really need the aggression to make them shoot from further away. It really makes the playstyle a lot more smooth. From those 3 links, you can add Awakened Edwa if you want Reflect Immunity is very good. You can also add Increased Crit and Vicious Proj are very good DPS links. You're going to come to a time where you have too much damage and you're going to look for more coverage, and that is to drop Increased Crit and Vicious Proj for Return and GMP. When you turn on Return and GMP, your coverage is going to skyrocket. There's going to be fucking projectiles everywhere. You're not going to be able to see your screen, and you're going to feel happy inside. The coverage on these is immense, and it is going to be basically freezing the entire screen, and that's going to provide a pretty big safety net. Just everything's frozen. And so once you got the damage, you definitely want to be using GMP return. If you have even more damage, you can drop the Awakened Edwa and run Awakened Fork eventually. And that's just going to spawn even more projectiles and visual clarity. So just know that these are all options that you can do with your gem links. The Raise Zombie is going to be pretty cookie cutter here. It's just a Raise Zombie with Awakened Minion, Multi-Strike, and Edwa. With the 4 green Triads grip, you kind of have to jam some green gems in here. So just a phase run and enhance just to give yourself some movement speed. This helps a lot because you have an Umbilicus on, which means you don't have a Quicksilver for yourself. So every bit of movement speed that you can get is very important. So enhancing this phase run does help a lot with your personal movement speed. You got auras and utility here, which is just a Vol Molten Shell to get a bunch of mitigation with your aura bot. The Vol Molten Shell is very good here, even though you don't have a lot of personal armor, because you can snapshot the buff while inside of aura range and then leave the aura range and you still have the max Molten Shell. You use your own discipline as well as your own purity so you can become immune to elemental ailments. And then you have a carrion golem just to add a little bit of fizz damage to all your minions. One setup here that I stole from somebody else on POE Ninja is the Arcanist brand Desecrate Spirit Offering 3-link. This is very, very helpful for Spirit Offering uptime. Basically, you can cast the brand, and in this 3-link, it will alternate casts on Desecrate and Spirit Offering. So as long as the brand is attached to something, you'll have pretty much 100% uptime on the Spirit Offering. Last but not least, you need some mobility with Flame Dash. You can brand recall the Spirit Offering brand as well as a Convocation in case you ever need to call the minions back. Calling the minions back to you is super useful. There are situations in which your minions are like attacking an Undying pack and maybe can cause some lag. There are situations in which you can prevent that from convocating them off of it or convocating them into stuff, so it's definitely a necessary link here. There is one last thing to mention here with the gearing and links, and that is we have Necromantic Aegis. The reason we have Necromantic Aegis, even though we don't have a shield equipped, is because we have a weapon swap. You're going to want to make a shield with 2 minimum frenzy and 2 minimum power charges. This is simply just Awaken or orbing these 2 mods together on a Crusader base and a Redeemer base. And what you can do is you can weapon swap to the shield and then quickly weapon swap back. And this will give all of your minions 2 frenzy and 2 power charges. And it is a substantial amount of damage and 100% worth doing. You can see our full DPS here is sitting at 426 million with the charges up, and as soon as I take them off, it goes down to 360 million. So it is a substantial portion of the damage that you want to do. So definitely weapon swap, use the charges. Your playstyle is just going to be putting down the brand to get Spirit Offering uptime and then weapon swapping the charges on, and that is basically the only things you need to cast. One thing to mention here is we did try putting on Vol Summon Skeletons just to create more Animal House, style minion build here. And there's a problem with the skeleton general that comes from Vol Summon Skeletons, and that is they get a fire damage aura, like a 1 in 3 chance to just create a general that gives you this aura, which gives all of your minions fire damage, which is a no-no because they'll start to ignite, which will break the culling setup. So Vol Summon Skeletons is unfortunately off the table here. Now, 2 more things to talk about. One of them is going to be this Juicer Timeless Jewel here. This is going to be the aspirational Timeless Jewel, what you're looking for, but you're most likely not going to get something this good. The Impossible Escape here on Supreme Decadence lets you allocate Redemption and Righteous Army. It also has the potential to get Slum Lords that you can allocate here. Here you have 2 that are inside of the range. Additionally, we've pathed to a 3rd, and then you're also reserving your Anoint slot for a 4th. You're almost certainly not going to get something this good. You might have to spend 2 extra points here to grab, an extra Slum Lord here. But ideally, you're looking for 3 passives here and 1 that's anointed. Last thing to talk about here is the Ascendency choice. The main thing is we want some quality of life with the offering. So the 40% skill effect duration here does a lot for your Vol Molten Shell, does a lot for your phase run, does a lot for your offering uptime. It's just super good to have the skill effect duration. The other one is the Plaguebringer thing here. When you're consuming corpses with the brand here, it'll actually trigger the nearby corpse bonus, which gives you the 10% more damage and the 10% reduced damage for the enemies. And then you just come down here for some increased minion damage, and then you get Unholy Might because getting all of that fizz as extra chaos does provide a lot of damage, as well as it has some synergy here with our Severed in Sleep because it gives us Withered, which will increase the chaos damage that the mobs take. It does help with the damage quite a bit. One last thing I want to mention is here is what the Hyrri's Watch Spectres look like in action. You can see it's just a dude with a bow. They have a pretty far aggro radius. radius. They do about the same damage as the Redemption Sentries. And here's what the Redemption Sentries look like. They shoot this like snipe projectile, and they also just have GMP on all of their stuff as well. They do about the same damage. They honestly feel very identical. I think that the Hyrri's Watch has a slightly larger aggro radius than the Redemption Sentries here. But honestly, they feel very similar to me. One last thing to talk about is going to be like aspirational upgrades. Now, we did build this character last league just to give it a test run here. And two things you're going to be wanting to look forward to like, you know, increase the ceiling of the DPS of this build is going to be, of course, a Squire. And then you're going to be using a pseudo link sword, which is going to look something like this. These aren't too expensive to make. Both of them combined, the Squire plus the sword, is probably going to run you like 30, 40, maybe 50 divines, depending on when you get it in the league. But this is going to probably replace your Matas and give you a ton more damage. So one upgrade path is just getting a Squire. It's going to be pretty much the best way to get damage out of this build. Of course, last but not least is going to be the Hydra Spectre that we saw in the reveal here. We are, of course, going to try out this Spectre, but we really don't know, one, how good the AI is, two, how good the damage is, and three, how rare they are. But it does seem like something that could fit the build because it is a probably fizz to cold Spectre. And so it does tick the boxes that we do need. So it is definitely something worth investigating. Yeah, guys, I hope that sheds some light on the carry build that we're going to be playing on the next league. It's brand new technology. We've been working on it for quite a long time now. We've been talking about like the minion carry and Widowbrewer for like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months now or something like that. So we're super excited to try it out. I'm going to be doing a full breakdown of like all of the other builds, including the Aura Bot, Curse Bot, Mana Guardian, Kohler, Ghostbuster, Minor Support, all of that kind of stuff. I'll probably get it out tomorrow. And I'll also have a video going over like all of the Atlas strats that we're going to be trying come the next patch. Look out for those in the next couple days. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can always leave them in the comments. I try to answer most people unless your question's stupid. So yeah, once again, I'm Snap, and thanks for watching.